Everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Bertold, who is an intermediate photographer from Poland. Bertold says he wanted to take a portrait which didn't necessarily rely on eye contact to work. He also wanted to convey a sense of calm and serenity in the portrait subject. We don't know the Canon body, but Bertold shot this with a Canon 24-105 zoom lens at 105 and shot wide open here at f4, and shutter speed was a 2/50th of a second. We've got some interesting information about the lighting, and lighting is one thing that I think is really beautiful here in a lot of ways. Bertold has a flash that is modified by an umbrella that's to the portrait subject's left to camera right, and it's sort of a high to low light source. And then Bertold has a fill card down here that's bouncing the light back and helping to soften the shadows that are being generated by the key light. Under questions and comments, Bertold says, does this image work as a portrait, and do I feel the calm mood that he's trying to convey? And I love this image. It's part of the reason why I picked it. So many things to like about this. I love the idea of getting away from the eye contact. I love the dramatic gesture of the head turned down and the eye closed. Not only that, but this idea of half of the face being covered by the hair. The closed eye, half of the face being covered, these are things that create mystery, and it's very evocative for the viewer. So that's very powerful. And I definitely think that peace or serenity could be one emotional feeling that the viewer could project onto this portrait subject. I love what's happening with the lighting, particularly right here. To me, the main subject, the thing that's really sort of selling the mood that Bertold is going for, or is selling whatever mood the viewer is sort of getting from this, is the closed eye. And the quality of light here is just really sort of stunning. I love the combination of these highlights that are moving across the eyelid and over the eyebrow, and then this shadow. And all of this creates a very, very dramatic triangle and just creates a lot of dimension. It really makes this a very powerful archetypal idea in this image. Lots and lots of things to like here. The shallow depth of field creating some dimension is evocative and beautiful. The close shot, the tight shot, the idea of coming in and unconventionally cropping, not showing the top of the head and even the bottom of the face, I think is very powerful, again helping to accentuate the mood in the eye. A lot of things to like. When I think about perfect world variation here, or perfect world improvement, I would like to push even harder the idea of evoking a mood, and I would like to bring the idea of the eye forward even more. As much as I love the light here and in some other places in the image, there are a couple of places where the light to me is taking away from the main subject. Right here is sort of a hot spot. I think this shape up here, if we're not going to crop the image, is pretty important to help to balance the lower mask of the face and the nose. So I think these two ideas are needed, but I just would like to tone down what's happening with the lighting up here. Same thing on the nose here. As much as I love the light here, on the nose you're getting, instead of a dimensional quality of light, real flat light on one side of the nose and pretty bright, and because of the hair, which I like, but because it's creating a shadow, you also have real high contrast here. It really starts to make the portrait subject's nose come forward, and with her looking down and Bertold being in this close, that's also accentuating this part of her face, and we can turn that down by sort of turning the light down after the fact in Photoshop. The other thing that I think about here is the lips and how they may be competing with the idea of the eye. There's a real strong sense of movement down to the mouth, and lips are a real powerful archetype, obviously, for all kinds of reasons. And then the color red is the most visually powerful color, so that can start to compete. And all that starts to make me think of a black and white conversion, because it's much easier to manage sort of value and contrast changes in monochrome than it is in color, where colors are mutually dependent on each other. Things can start to look funky if I really start to lean on colors. And obviously if I go to monochrome, we'll take the red away. And you can also imagine that in monochrome, when you look at this image, that this is going to easily become the highest contrast thing in the image. And so I just went in and looked at the channels, and even with a black and white adjustment layer and all this stuff that's been added into the raw converter, I know I said this the other day and I don't want to offend anybody, but you know, it's just I love some of the new things in CS4, and I'll probably keep updating my versions of Photoshop as long as I stay into photography, as much as I am now. It's, you know, my career. But so much stuff is being heaped on us that is not practical in a lot of ways, and so much of the time this is how I still convert to black and white. I come and I just pick a starting point on one of the channels based on what I'm trying to do, and so much of the time it's either the red or green channel, and I go from there. And you might think, well, Craig, why do you do that? I do it because the reality is once I get to here, I'm going to come in and make local adjustments anyway. And I would rather do that with curves and levels based on trying to change one area or painting on a blank layer than going into an adjustment layer that has a bunch of sliders when I pull on them and it just affects everything everywhere. I would just rather get a decent starting point and go from there. So I'm sure there'll be some people that will email me and tell me why the black and white adjustment layer is the greatest thing that ever happened. The reality is I just don't use it that much. The first thing I did after picking the red channel was I went to just a layer and I blurred it just slightly because of this idea of calm and peace, just trying to soften this up a little bit more. And obviously I did not blur the area around the eye, but everything else got a little bit of blur. I then came in and did something that's kind of funky. This area right here is an area that's at the top. It's centered over all of this energy that's so powerful in the image, and I don't really want to see this sort of part in the hair. So I just did something kind of rough, but I think you can get away with it just like this. I came in and I just selected something like this and put it up on its own layer and then just scaled it over and painted part of that in there. And that's what it looks like. So there's before and there's after. And I like that. It's a subtle thing, but I think it cuts down on that high contrast part of the image. It's right in the middle pointing down. I then came in and started to work on these areas that I said that I wanted to tone down. I used a couple of curves layers to cut down on the feeling of light in those areas. There's one and there's another one. And you can see I've really sort of flattened this out with the exception of the eye. And then from here, I think there's a million different directions you could go in. I mean, what's interesting is if we make this layer active and we go to the adjustment panel area and click on curves, I mean, if we just start to play around with just anywhere on the curve, just adjusting, we could go for some really cool high key thing. And what's so interesting, part of the reason why I flattened things out the way that I did is just flattening it out and then leaving the eye as the thing where it's a black point. And you can see that from there, you can get all kinds of feelings by just making simple curves adjustments. And I happen to really like something that could be really funky, do something that's very, very high key, really making the eye come forward. And let's go back to layers and we'll just chunk this and we'll just look at some other things I played around with. I came in on this version and darkened all the way around on the outside, popped the light on the eye a little bit more. This is just a blank layer here. There's not anything on there. And then what about this? I mean, this is not the peace and calm and serenity thing anymore. It's something else. But there are just so many directions that you could go in once you sort of just created left the dramatic light that's just happening on the eye. So I'm going to leave it for there. I'm going to leave it at that point for today. To me, a couple of big takeaways from looking at Berthold's gorgeous shot here. Just the idea of dramatic gesture or encouraging people to be emotional or to do something in front of the camera that's evocative. And again, the idea of showing less, that less is more, and how powerfully evocative that can be. But one of the main things is just the quality of light here, just starting to play with lighting and seeing light and using light to create dimension and to accentuate your ideas. Really, really beautiful light moving across the main subject. Beautiful portrait subject. Great image by Berthold. I want to say a big thank you to Berthold for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.